Tips with Kristof from ASE. Such a fantastic week it has been here in Sydney. The weather is wonderful. It is starting to warm up. Summer is almost here and it is just around the corner. Let me tell you, I'm looking forward to some beautifully warm weather. Now, thank you to everyone sending through a lot of questions this week. It was very interesting. I've had quite a bit of conversations with yourselves as well. Thank you for everyone who had the time to catch up with me this week. It was great to see you at the Data Summit that I attended yesterday. CyberCon is on next week down in Melbourne. It is biggest cyber community event in Australia, hands down. So there's no question. If you are headed down there, please let me know. I'd look forward to catching up with you while I'm down there. So, big question, and the reason for today's session is why is let me start that again. Why your MSP is not an MSSP. So let me start by unpacking what MSP stands for. It's a managed services provider. Now, there is a difference between an MSP or managed services provider and an MSSP. Now, an MSSP is a managed security service provider. So let's try and unpack this in the way that I identify how we look after our technology partners and our customers. So the idea behind what our engagements generally are is all around data. Data is at the key of everything and has been since the inauguration of technology. Now, fundamentally, technology has shifted along those industrial evolutions as we have seen, but the key behind any data is to identify it. Firstly, know where your data lives, govern it. So put some GRC, governance, risk and compliance, around what that data does, where it lives and how it's secured, which is the third pillar, security. Management of the data, so making sure that it is managed in a way that is within compliance, regulations, etc., but also within the organization. And then finally connecting it. So it's the 5 pillars of data. So identify, govern, secure, manage, and connect. Now, what does a managed services provider do is the 4th pillar, which is manage the availability of a platform and end devices. So if you're talking about the information lifecycle, it is in the fact that it is the application and below that is considered a platform. So your computer that you're watching this on, your mobile device that you may well be watching this on, is what an MSP looks after to make sure that it's up, it's running, it's patched, etc. But the security aspects of that device will not necessarily fall under the management of an MSP. So here's how that conversation then gets changed, because a managed security provider will actually take and secure the asset's data. So that could be securing the data within a platform, the data that lives on an end device or on your technology infrastructure. And this could be a server, for example, or it could actually be an endpoint device, again, taking the security on that device to another level. The reason being is application availability is what an MSP looks after. The data and security is what an MSSP does. So the reason why I needed to identify that is because one product doesn't necessarily cover the other. So there is a lot of questions around why does my MSP want to charge me more around security? The reason being is it takes a completely different set of tools, completely different set of skill sets, and definitely if you separate them out, you should be having 2 totally different groups of eyes looking at different aspects of your infrastructure. We do the same thing here at ASE. We separate our security division so that they are looking at our security conscious parts of the organization and run a SOC, or what's known as a security operations center. Now, there is also the MSP, which is where we would have your service desk, where your standard calls are routed and troubleshooting, etc., technology support, making sure the platforms are up and making sure that the endpoint devices are functioning. So that is the difference there, and therefore the tools, the skills, etc., to run a security product as opposed to a managed services are quite different, and therefore if you would like to consider it, a fries with that approach. So hopefully that gives a little bit more detail in regards to that. I have actually got a session that I will be coming back to you with in a bit more detail around that, because obviously there's quite a lot to unpack, but I wanted to have that brief conversation with you all. Now, back to the point around the 5 pillars. Identity. Are you aware of where your data lives? That's probably the key fundamental part of what an organizations need to do in their data strategy, because a data strategy is the most important part of building out any digital platform or digital transformation when we start to talk about it. Now, in the event that you are unaware of that, feel free to reach out. We're happy to run a data engagement workshop with you at no cost, and feel free to do so by connecting with me directly. By doing this, we can go through and identify where the data sources are, understand what IP your data has and where it lives, what PI information, so that's personal information you may be keeping in regards to your customers, in regards to your staff, etc. So that is very crucial to understand, because that is what customers are getting breached for. Fundamentally, that PI or personal information is what cyber criminals are really interested in. So you need to identify, understand the data, know where it lives, and then go through those understating pillars to be able to make sure that you are securing the data, managing it effectively in a life cycle sense. So you aren't also, if you look at GDPR, for example, as a set of rules and protocols to follow, life cycle of data needs to also be diminished at a point where you delete data when it's no longer relevant or useful as an organization. That also means times and life cycles that you need to be able to remove. So you are not creating a large blast radius for yourself in the event of a security breach. So hopefully this has given you a few tiny little tips. I know that it is quite a lot to take in, but I know you've asked quite a few questions around that. So feel free to ask any more that you have. I will try and address those directly to those of you who've reached out, but I know that you asked, quite a few of you asked this week what the differences were between an MSP and an MSSP. As always, please be safe, people out there. There has been a raft of spam that has started to come through, and it is starting to look a lot more genuine in the fact that they are utilizing tools such as ChatGPT for natural language processing, so that the words are very clear and they look like they're a legitimate source. So I have put up a top tips around spam earlier this week. Keep an eye out, because that phishing is the term that I'm referring to in regards to being phished or being scammed out of your money by emails. Often if there's anything around urgency, so if someone says, you've got to get back to me within 15 or 24 hours, please be mindful of that, because generally that is the best way to tell that it is a scam, and make sure that you are not attempting to respond to that and delete it immediately. Any other questions, please feel free to shout them out. As I said, CyberCon is on next week, so I look forward to catching up with the whole stack of you down there. In the meantime, be safe. As always, think before you click, and I look forward to catching up with you very soon. See you for the top tech tips